Good morning, Scott here, known as Cantaloupe to some online, and I'm bringing a video to you on a subject that's interesting to me. It might be of interest to you or someone you know. And I want to talk about heroism. Heroism, being a hero, and in particular, the difference between being a hero and a busybody. There is a big difference, turns out. And heroism is actually pretty amazing, if you ask me. It has gotten a bad rap in recent times, recent being in the last 50 years or give or take, maybe 25 years. I've heard a lot of things about anti-heroism starting in like the 60s and 70s and 80s and moving forward. They started talking badly about heroes. They were starting to discourage the idea, they being, those who influence society, policymakers, authorities. They decided that there were too many heroes, and the influence by comic book heroes and such had been too counterproductive, had been destructive, even when people who are unqualified decide to take matters into their own hands. I'm guessing this was the impetus for the anti-hero subculture, and people just generally not talking about heroes anymore, or at least as much as they had been before, like in the 20s, 30s, 40s, and just in the early part of the 50s, to my understanding. But anyway, no, heroism is actually really cool if you understand what it is. And I want to disambiguate the idea in this video. As far as I understand it, heroism is not so much stepping out as a missionary kind of, a person who involves themselves in other people's business. It's not a person who rushes to the aid of anybody who appears to be in distress. That is definitely not the idea. Heroism is something that you may not be familiar with, and it's when there is a challenge at hand, such as somebody's threatening you personally, and you decide against that threat to do the right thing, especially when it involves other people, especially when the outcome, after perhaps exposing the person who was threatening you for impropriety, if that's what the threat was about, and that usually is, if somebody's fearful and upset that you might expose them and they threaten you because of your information or your candor, or just by doing something contrary to the way that they would do it, and you persist despite the difficulty, despite the uphill battle and the real danger involved, then you and if somehow you emerge victorious, if you stick to your guns and you surmount the situation, overcome the obstacle, and emerge triumphant, as they say, you are hailed as a hero. You become a hero because the new way, the precedent, the example that you set is proper. That's the way to become a hero, not so much by trespassing. Hopefully that's obvious. Not so much by disregarding the preferences and boundaries of others, but this is the opportunity. The opportunity is to understand that other people have boundaries, and just because what they're doing may not look perfect or proper to you, if it doesn't affect you and it's not creating damage outside of a contract, that is literally none of your business. If people understand this point and they still want to do the right thing against, difficulties and threats and people who would block them, they can experience what's called glory, right? So heroism and glory are connected. These are ideas that used to be celebrated. They are historically celebrated and celebrated in literature throughout the millennia, where adventurers and characters enjoy lots of victory and glory and honor and heroism, and these are deep rivers of literary substance that you can still find in great books, classic books. There's a reason for this, because they are virtuous, right? Virtuous being, beneficial and good to society, good for people in general. The kind of behavior that is conducive to health and happiness. This is what defines virtue, if you ask me. So all of these ideas are pretty closely connected, and heroism's in that group of ideas. And, in conclusion, the last thing I'll say about it is, if you detect that you're going uphill, it's not automatically a bad thing. Hopefully that's obvious, but it seems like I need to say this. Going uphill isn't necessarily a bad thing. There's something called working smart, but all work is uphill to some degree. It wouldn't be called work otherwise. If you're going downhill, if it seems too easy, it probably is. If you're just going along with whoever shows up and tells you what to do, that sounds too easy to me. You have to be able to question what you're being told, understand enough of it so that you are confident that you're not doing more harm than good, right? And once you understand at least a little bit of your project, whether it's your own project or if you're employed by somebody, and you do the right thing because you know it's the right thing, despite all odds, you will be, by degrees, some kind of hero. And that's okay. I applaud that. I applaud heroes. I like heroes. So you reach out if you like with questions or comments to whitehotrobot@gmail.com. Thank you.